Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and tickled pink that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, CastBox, Player FM, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have an amazing show for you today. First up, star of stage and screen, Tamron Hall. The host of the Tamron Hall Show is here to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called Harlem Honey, The Adventures of a Curious Kid. And later in the show, Terry Grahl will be here to tell us about the little bear who loved its handmade dolls, and also to tell us about the incredible nonprofit organization that she founded and is doing so much great work. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. I am so very excited. Our guest today is watching me at my gym every morning. I'll explain that a little bit later. Join us right now from New York City. Our guest is here to celebrate Harlem Honey, The Adventures of a Curious Kid. Please welcome to the show two-time Emmy Award-winning television host and the star of the Tamron Hall Show, Tamron Hall. Hey, Tamron, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Jed. Good to see you. Happy New Year. And I love watching you in the gym. Listen, you are staying focused. You are thriving in 2025. I'm so proud of you. Keep it up. Keep it up.
Thank you. You know, I came home the other day to my wife, and I was complaining my back is so, all these muscles are so sore. I must have gone too hard lifting weights. And then I realized it's standing on the treadmill at incline 15, holding on for dear life for 15 or 20 minutes.
It counts. I love that you're in Boston. And it's one of the first cities when I launched the Tamron Hall Show that we hit up, and it was so important. They've been great, and that whole area has just supported the show into its 6th season. And it's part of the reason that I even have this book for this kid in my life and all kids everywhere.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about Harlem Honey.
Well, you know, as I've shared over the years, my son is now 5 years old, and I affectionately, and I use the word affectionately on purpose, call myself a late to the party mom. I was 48 when I had my son Moses. And there's so many books over the years of being in morning TV and in daytime TV, some 30 years of my career as a journalist that I've read and were enlightening. But as you know, nothing prepares you until you're actually on the field, right? I can think about playing baseball all day long until I get on the field and pick up the bat. It's not real. You can read every book in the world until you get on the field. And so getting on the field of parenthood has just been the most amazing thing. And for me, the Harlem Honey was born after the pandemic, after the shutdown. My son was one of those kids that we call, you know, the pandemic babies, where his life went from cousins and friends and, you know, traveling and walking outside and in and around everywhere to inside with mom and dad for a very long time. And by the time, you know, we started to be social again and He's just over 1 year old. I noticed how shy he was. In our home, he was bold and he was exploratory and all of these things. And he'd walk out and, hide behind me, which is not uncommon, right? We know this, whether there's a global pandemic or not, our world is big and kids are curious about it, but they're also cautious, and that's okay. And so the Harlem Honey was born from the fact that my son's first home was in Harlem, New York. But I wanted to explore this travel series through the lens of this kid who is outgoing, but in a whole new world. He's just moved from Texas, where his grandmom and his family lives. And now he's in New York. It is so different. It is so loud. It's so big. And through the lens of this little boy, I would love to have parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles be inspired to have that conversation that is not uncommon about facing your fears and learning that there are beautiful things in new places and new spaces to be explored. But as adults, we sometimes forget that. So this allows you to support them and erase that notion of you're not afraid, get out there, or don't be afraid, get out there. All of those things are natural. It's a big world, and we've seen it. I'm 55 many, many times, but for kids, it's the first time.
Right. That is one of the things that we've talked about, and doing this podcast has really helped me understand. I wish I understood it better when I was a parent, but the idea that, our kids, our 1 year old, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year olds, everything is new to them. Everything that they're doing for the first time, things that we take for granted. And I think if we have more empathy for our kids, but also join them in that wonder.
Yes. I love that you said that, join them in that wonder. And a part of Harlem Honey's adventure is a dear friend that he's just met across the street, a lovely neighbor. We sometimes forget, yes, you can talk to a neighbor. You can have community, right? And he meets a neighbor and they explore Harlem and all of its beautiful things, the Apollo Theater, the iconic Sylvia's Soul Food Restaurant. And when I was creating this book, my whole goal really is to have the Harlem Honey continue to travel to other places. Go to Boston, go somewhere out of your lane and explore. And so for me, that was the inspiration. That's been the fun part of it. I can tell you the first time I got on a plane, I was 7 years old. I went to see my uncle Tommy, and I'm Southern kid, so my aunt Mabel, and we went to see them straight out of Wizard of Oz, Kansas. And I flew on a plane. I was 7 years old. And this was back when you could go to the carnival and win these big plastic banks. And mine was a poodle, a big plastic pink poodle. I don't know why they didn't give me a soft stuffy, but there I am on the plane flying to Kansas. And I'll never forget that feeling. I'll never forget it. And when my son talks about, oh, Mom, remember when? And he's only 5. I was like, yeah, of course I remember when. It was the other day. But this book, Harlem Honey, his friends, his adventures, really is a love letter to curiosity. In the forward, I say, to the curious kids out there and the patient parents who know why and understand why. Why is that very word, why, so important? And I love it in people. We were just talking, Jed, I'll tell everyone, you talked about meeting someone new the other day and you're hoping to work with them again later. And I said, that's a beautiful thing. When I'm hiring for the Tamron Hall Show as the executive producer of that show, one of the things that I love most is curiosity. I love when a young producer or an intern or someone walks in and they're, wait. And they're not afraid to be curious. Sometimes we assume that curiosity means you're not studied or that you don't know, or there's a negative association with asking why. There's a joke about kids. Are we there yet? Wonder why they're asking that, right? And so for me, this is about curiosity. It's about exploration. It is about the innocence of wonder. And the Harlem Honey explores this, and I hope to take him around the country to explore neighborhoods and communities of all backgrounds. I'm from Texas, and Harlem Honey's from Texas, but he ends up in New York City. What a leap for a kid. And that's the joy of it.
What a leap for a kid. It's a leap for an adult too.
Listen, I remember, Jed, I can tell you step by step the day I moved to New York, when I went to college, Philadelphia, 1,528 miles from my parents' door in Burleson, Texas, to my door in Philadelphia, Jones Hall. 1,500. I am 55, and I still remember that number. That's what it means to travel and explore and learn that there are beautiful things in new faces and new people. And I think that more than ever, that's an important message. I grew up in a small town where I knew all of my neighbors. Mm-hmm. My parents knew all of our neighbors. And I know that sounds like some Gen X nostalgia or baby boomer nostalgia from back in the day, but it's true. And I love so many things about this journey with my son, but I love when he, greets the guy who, works at his school, and he's like, "Hey, Mr. So-and-so," or "Hi," he is joyful about meeting new people. Yeah. And I think that's something that has been a learning process for me. Like so many other new parents, I'm like, "Get out there, go, 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 go." And then I learned that wasn't the right thing. And so this is a part of me sharing a little bit of what I've learned having a child who absolutely, I remember one day we were walking, and he's maybe about 4, and his hands were sweating. His body was reacting at such a young age to this new moment that I took for granted, and I was like, it's okay. And, through books that I've read, got on my knees, eye to eye. I'm going to start crying. I'm so emotional because I think it is easy for us to forget it. So I want this book to be a fun read. I want, as I said, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends to be reminded, even at our age, of what it feels like and what it felt like.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm really impressed with, and it's a very different perspective than almost all of the authors who've come on, it's very clear from our conversation that you have written this book with the adults who are going to be reading it in mind just as much as you've had the little ones who are going to be hearing it in mind. I hope that was English. I'm not quite sure it was.
Oh, listen, I get it. I tell you, that's why I like kids' books. You can get away with these things. I'll tell you, that's exactly the case. And I think it is because 30 years of being in morning TV and having the great honor of meeting some of the, best children's writers, best minds in the world of understanding how to raise a child. And also my mother. Listen, my mom was a 19-year-old single mom when I was born, and she poured love and belief in me while also getting her a degree to become a teacher. She was fighting for me and fighting for her own future at the same time. And she's lucky, and I am lucky enough to say that, this is where our journeys brought us together. And for me, writing this book with all of the knowledge that I've been able to receive from the wonderful people who write about raising children, it's allowed me those moments of pause where for this book, it was also from my perspective. There were so many things oh gosh, Jed, I'm reading about diaper change, this, that, wait, do I, music, all of these things. And, the notion of, again, this world is so big. The other day, I was with my son, we were driving a route that we drive all the time, but now he's 5 and he sees things again, different age, different things. And he says, "Mom, what happened to the leaves?" And I said, it's winter, and so he has seen this 1,000 times, but now at 5 seasons, and it just takes on a new meaning. They go from words that he's memorized, right? Summer, fall, winter, spring. He's memorized that. Now to a full understanding of what those words mean. And I think that's, for me, I get emotional because it is a reminder that every day is a chance to learn, not just for him, but for me. And I stammered on how to explain it. I was like, "Oh, wait, okay, well, here's the deal. This is what happens here, buddy. Let's pull over." It's great. It's been great. And to write Harlem Honey from that lens, I moved a lot as a kid. As I said, my childhood was not the one that I think, my mom planned, but it's the one she accepted and received and thrived in. And I'm so lucky that she ended up marrying my stepfather, who served in the Army for 30 years. And I had just the most perfect family, a blended family you can imagine. But I moved a lot. My dad was in the military. My step siblings moved a lot. And so I pull from all of that, but also that feeling of my own, of going into a new home and seeing your new room and wondering who lives next door and what are they going to say or how do I say hi to them?
Yeah. We just had a guest on, Charmaine Perry Knights, who wrote a book called I Move a Lot and That's Okay. And most people who see it think, oh, it's a book about a kid with ADHD. But no, it's a book about military families and how difficult it can be.
And it can be. Even think about it. You know, as I said, my father was in the Army for 30 years, even with FaceTime and all of this technology that exists today that didn't exist back then. It's still hard. My mother FaceTimes with my son every single day. And he says to her, Granny, can you take me, you know, and so she's giving him this tour guide and all over the house. But then we get there Thanksgiving and seeing it in person, whole different thing, you know, he's like, wait, that's the pantry that Granny told me that I can have my Cheetos that my mom won't let me have. That's the pantry. That's what that thing looks like. So, you know, it is that. And I love that, you know, there are so many beautiful books and I'm happy that there are so many that celebrate the empowerment of young girls. And one of the things being a boy mom, I wanted to contribute to the conversation from that perspective as well. So that's why I wanted Moses, my son, this character, to also be this young boy protagonist who has a best friend who happens to be a girl, but through his lens as well. And we have a dog and a bird in our home. So he's got a bird who's a friend, and he's got a dog because when I grew up with pets. And one of the things that when, you know, living in New York City, we debated, okay, can we have a dog? And I said, of course we have to have a dog. I don't know a life without a dog, you know, and we have my dog. And so that's why the dog, she's a hybrid of the 3 dogs that we have. So we mixed her name in there. And we did the book, it's called Harlem Honey because when my son was born, we lived across the street from a family who had a honeycomb and they had bees in the city. It was really neat. So a lot of it is inspired by my real life and real experience with my son. And honestly, as a child, who was not as always outgoing as people expected. Even in my profession now, folks are surprised. My friends call me a social loner. They are quite surprised at how I show up on camera. But if you see me at a party, I'm often the person in the corner. I am. And I have to make myself go over and say hello. Even at 55, I have to make myself. I feel often sorry for that one person I speak to first because I'm like a swan. I swan up with them for the rest of the party. They can't get rid of me. And they're like, oh gosh, Tamron Hall really likes me. And while I may, I'm too afraid to say hello to anybody else. So it's all a part of that.
I get that. There are very many. I just attended my godson's wedding down in Dominican Republic, and my beautiful wife's family all speak Spanish. I speak a little bit, but you know, I'm able to get out in English or Spanish. I can get up in front of 3,000 people and entertain them for an hour or whatnot. But down in that wedding, I found one guy that spoke English, and it's like, come here, we're hanging.
This book is meant to hit that nerve in all of us. You know, the Harlem Honey, his ability to go outside of his home with his father, with his mother, with his friends. And it is community. It's facing fears. It's celebrating the idea of having a little fear because it is natural and it's not something to be ashamed of. As we talk about mental health, you know, the idea that fear is bad, I think, is not productive. It is something that can inspire. That's why we say face your fears, you know, and it is healthy. And so in this book, I am so excited to start this journey. I was also inspired, you know, by Dora the Explorer, you know, this idea of exploring, but that's a world of fantasy. I want this little character to explore the many beautiful places and spaces in this country I've been able to travel through being a journalist. And as I said, there are so many places that I've been able to get off the plane or get off a train, get out of the car. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is Tucson. Holy moly. You know what I mean? It's great. And I said to my friend the other day, while I love, you know, traveling to Italy because it sounds so fancy over the summer. I'm going to Italy this summer. You know, we forget how beautiful this country is and how many beautiful places there are if you jump in the car and get a chance to do it. So we're going to jump in the car and jump on the plane with this guy over the years, I hope. And like when my father took me on my first fishing trip to Corpus Christi, Texas, and those are the things and the feelings I want people to reflect on in their own hearts as adults, but inspiring kids.
You know, I have a feeling that you are probably like me, and when you get to a new town, you're anxious to go to a grocery store so you can see real people.
I don't know about the grocery store, but I want to go to the local restaurant. I am that person. And that's why it was important also to start with him in Harlem. New York is a huge city, and of course the Times Square, and there's so many things. But, the beauty of Harlem sometimes is forgotten. Even though the name is iconic, and I wanted to remind people of the little neighborhoods, the little big neighborhood in that case. But no, I'm that person. I don't typically like to go to the trendier places. I want to get out. I want to go to the local spot. I'll go and ask somebody where's a diner? I'm a diner person. Because I can tell a lot about that neck of the woods, as Al Roker says, by your diners. And show me the diner, and I can show you if I love you or not. So that's the fun thing about it.
Hey, I want to take a moment. I think it's really important. We have so many kids that are growing up. Your son, 5 years old, probably already knows about devices, and in a few years he'll be wanting to get on social media, whatever that is like in 5 or 10 years. How can we, as somebody who has been creating content for television, has been reporting in the news, how can we help our kids become more media literate as they grow?
That's a phenomenal question. And it's something that I, as a profession, I was telling a friend the other day, you'll see a news story and we'll say, digital and social media, it's toxic, it's this, and then the newscaster will say, and follow us on da 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 da. And you're like, wait a minute, you just told me to stay off the internet, and then you tell me to go on it. Wait, I'm all confused here. And so I think for me, and I have 3 nieces and a nephew, all over the age of 18, and all have encountered individual struggles with social media. And we've had, you name it, like any other family, we've gone over the line of what it is and, the dangers of it, and seen it firsthand. I think for me, it was an interesting conversation because when everything shut down, my son had only gone to one of those little kids gyms one time in New York. They have little gyms and they can, learn to, pull and push and all this stuff. And he'd gone to a music class. All of those classes went online. And I have a photo of him. He's 2 years old and he's standing in front of an iPad while they're doing the little exercises because the class was online. And now I'm supposed to, at 3, take this from him and say, oh, that thing is bad for you. That thing you've been on for almost a year, singing, seeing other kids doing it. It's really, really bad. And I'm going to take that from you. So I do try to balance it. Currently, Bluey is the king in my house. Paw Patrol, real close second. Mickey Roadster Racers. So I try to monitor it. I can't get on a soapbox and say we don't have digital in my home. I travel a lot. We're just on a plane with my son for 5 hours. I didn't want the person behind me kicking my seat because they're mad because my antsy kid. So my kid, is watching downloaded episodes of Bluey. We just did a show on it on the Tamron Hall Show about this. So I am obviously just a vessel. I receive the information like any other parent, and I do what works best for my home and the life we live. I've got a 5-year-old on a plane. I can't say, now here, do your crayons. I could, yeah. It's going to be a battle, and the person behind me is not going to like it, and the person in front of me is not going to like it. As far as actual signing up for a social media account, I thank the Lord above that he's 5, and I've got about 13 more years to prepare for that, whatever that is. I do not envy any parent who has to face that decision. As I said, with 3 nieces in particular who have had their own individual challenges with social media and what comes with that. I've given them all 3 different advice. One, for sure, I've said, this is not the space for you. She takes everything so personally, and she measures herself despite us propping her up, and to say, you've got this. And I've even gotten her books on, this is you. And she flourishes in many, many ways. But I noticed a difference in her on social media. She didn't take my advice, but I gave her the advice, and so I think that's the that's the challenge, right? My son goes to a school that's digital free now. Jonathan Haidt was on my show talking about the digital burden that these kids are struggling with. But, you know, I tell people all the time, we don't carry pagers anymore. Our first cell phone was in a bag. You know, things evolve. And hopefully we will evolve to teach them, just like with this book, you know, evolve to have the questions received well, the curiosity received well. And we evolve to help them understand that digital is an advancement of society. It's an evolution. But how do we teach them to use it responsibly?
I think that's, you're absolutely right. Having conversations with our kids about the things that they experience in the world. And that's why I launched Reading with Your Kids. I knew that, you know, reading with your kids, it helps them learn to read and it's fun, but it was the bond that we developed. It was those conversations that we had that turned in from reading with your kids, that turned into cooking with your kids and watching TV with your kids and having conversations. And that's why I'm so happy that you have created Harlem Honey. I think it's going to be a wonderful way for kids to, and parents, to help remind parents to be mindful and to have some great conversations about travel and community.
I love that you're doing this. I'll tell you, it is going back quickly to the things you remember in life. I remember all of the books in my room as a kid. I mean, I wrote a crime novel inspired by, you know, my Nancy Drew book series, the dusty ones that I kept with the Hardy Boys, you know, and I remember the little golden edges of the books, the little thin ones that were in my bookshelf at 7 years old, 8 years old. So I applaud you for creating this space to talk about it, because it is a bonding opportunity. It's a chance to have my kid look me in the eye and I look him in the eye. And, you know, we were just reading The Legend of Rock, Paper, Scissors. And then guess what? We're like rock, paper, and scissoring it, and he thinks he's winning, but he's not. I give him the win. He's 5. But, you know, it's taking the pages and then allowing them to live in our lives.
Wonderful.
That's the beauty of what you do. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, and thank you for looking out for me at the gym. I really appreciate that. I'll be there tomorrow morning.
You got it. Push that incline up. You got it.
In the meantime, where can people go to find out more about Harlem Honey, The Adventures of a Curious Kid, and find out more about your show and find out more about you?
Oh, wow. You can pre-order the book wherever you buy your book. It is available for pre-order, and you can follow me at Tamron Hall on Instagram and find out just with a simple click of where to buy the book. But wherever you buy your books, the Harlem Honey is available. Support your small bookstores if there's one in your neighborhood, or go online if that's easier as well. But I hope that this journey creates a conversation as you do with this phenomenal podcast. So enjoy the Harlem Honey and get it wherever you buy your books.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Harlem Honey. It's a brand new picture book from our guest, Tamron Hall. Tamron, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Hey families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. Join us right now from right outside of Detroit and the wonderful state of Michigan. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new children's book. It's called The Little Bear Who Loved Its Handmade Dolls. But I have a feeling we're going to talk about a lot more than that. Please welcome to the show, Terry Grahl. Hey, Terry, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
As I said, I think there's going to be a lot more that we're talking about than just your book on your website. And the thing that just jumps out at me is you are all about supporting women and kids, and especially female veterans, people who are being hurt by domestic violence and human trafficking and homelessness. I think that's the best place to start. Tell us what motivated you to create Enchanted Makeovers.
Well, where do I begin? I received a call in December of 2006 asking if I would volunteer and paint a wall. They were asking just for one wall at the shelter. Mind you, it was a post office where the women stayed with their children for 1 year. So I visited January of 2007, and they gave me a whole tour of the shelter. The last stop was the women's dorm. And as I walked up these stairs that were covered, I mean, they used what was donated, which was this chocolate brown paint. They covered the steps, the trim on the windows. The door was metal, because it was post office. I had to use both hands to push the door open. And when I went into the women's dorm, there was about 15 bunk beds, baby cribs held together with duct tape. The wall was held together with duct tape. I asked the director, where did the bunk beds come from? And she said they were donated from a prison. I said, well, where are the dressers? She said, well, we use boxes as dressers. I had a decorating business, and if I was going to volunteer, I would be donating my time. I'm all about how things are filled with energy. I mean, a room, a person, and that space, they have a great program, but the space was working against the program. Mm-hmm. And I took before pictures like I would do for a client. And I drove home and I said, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to look at those pictures. And at that time, you would download your photos. Mm-hmm. So a week had passed and I just had this thing on my heart, like I should look at these pictures. And I downloaded them. And there on that mattress covered in urine stains and 2 pillows, no pillowcases, was a polka dot pillow. I've always loved polka dots since I was a child. And when I saw the polka dots, I heard, trust me. And in that moment, I just raised my right hand and I said, I'll do it. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I didn't have the money, the volunteers. My kids were little at the time, so still had to take care of my kids. And I went back to the shelter. A week later, I just shared with the women what I hoped I could get for the new dorm. And in that moment, I just broke down. I did the ugly cry. The women started crying with me. And when I opened my eyes, I saw girls. And looking back, and now I can say it now, I was supposed to be there because I started that journey of healing for myself. The women said to me, it's going to be okay. And I knew in that moment, this was way beyond anything about transforming a space. It's about walking with women. Not here to save you, just walking beside you. And I still feel that way today, and it's been 17 years. Mm-hmm. The dorm was transformed. They got all new bunk beds. I mean, you name it, the murals. When it was done, I just remember saying, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I went back to my decorating business. And my very last client, it's so funny how it happened. She was complaining because her house was too small. 7,000 square feet wasn't enough. She needed 10,000 square feet to be happy. And I thought, wow, this is really funny. I'm like, I think I need to go to my mom's. So I drove to my mom's and she said to me, we're not going to talk about this anymore. You know where God needs you to be. So I went home. I sat on the bed, did the ugly cry again. And I made a deal. And people say, you made a deal with God? I said, yes. The deal was keep a roof over my head, my children's head, and food in the fridge. And this soft voice said, and glorify me. And it's loving people back to life. That's what it is wherever their spot they're in. It's just, for me, how my mother loved me and my brothers and sister was through Handmade. Because that's how we survived. Mm-hmm. That's how she took care of us. And it's just how my mother loved me is how I'm loving people back to life, is through Handmade. Embroidered pillowcases with positive words. We want people to serve with your talent. And from there, it just kept growing. It went from sewing rooms, permanent sewing rooms in shelters. Because my mother said a sewing machine saved her life. My mother battles with depression, and that's how she escapes. So I'm like, we have to have this program. From there, it was the Capes for Kids. And it's not about Superman. I believe every child has everything within him or her to be their own superhero. The fabric is just a reminder. So they're handmade capes made by people across the United States. We've gotten stuff from Switzerland, from Australia. We have our pillowcase program. And of course, we have our doll adoption because we battled with homelessness. And my doll was so important to me. I realize now as an adult, when I was taking care of my doll, I was taking care of myself. And it was just so comforting to me. It was my friend. So I'm like, well, this only makes sense is we have to have handmade dolls for the boys and girls that they have that feeling like I did.
Beautiful. So I'm guessing that the little bear who loved its handmade dolls was struggling and is kind of telling the story that lots of kids, unfortunately, are experiencing.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about the story, please.
Well, I want the bear to be any child. So, I don't care. I mean, the four walls are only different. I mean, that I always share with people, the shelter is your community. It's just the four walls are different. That's it. So when that book is being read to the child, I want them to imagine that they are the bear and how that feels, to receive that doll, but also how for me, expressing how I felt for my dolls is in that book. So it goes through how every little stitch, it was all filled with love, and care. And my great niece read this book and she's only 7 years old. And this was only when it was a manuscript. It was on a piece of paper. She put it against her chest and she said, I feel loved.
Neat.
Now, my friend is in her early 60s, I believe. I hope I'm nailing that right. And she read it and she said, I feel love and I feel loved and I feel at peace. And that's the message with the doll adoption. And that's the message with the book. Is that I hope everyone that reads this, until the child that even hears it, they know that they matter and that they are loved.
It sounds amazing that you took that chance to start this 17 years ago, that you had the trust that this is what you are supposed to do. A lot of people, even if they have a faith tradition, I think would be very, very hesitant to take the step that you took to really kind of not only lean into it, but jump into it. What gave you the courage to make that deal with God?
I don't call it courage. I just knew when I was in the shelter, having meals with the women and the women sharing their stories with me, I felt at peace and I felt myself. And doing that, as you say, that leap of faith, I would think I would be denying a part of me, if that makes sense. It's, there was no other decision but to say, I'm going to do this. I mean, I always felt like I had to protect the 9-year-old girl in me. I'll go a different way to explain this. I can now say a couple of years now, she has told me, I'm strong. I got this. I'm okay now. I've always felt like I was the 9-year-old girl, and I don't feel that now. I feel like she is strong, and I'm a warrior. So it was like God was saying, I'm taking you on this journey. You don't even know it, but you're going to heal and become a stronger person. And you're going to do that beside women and children.
Mm. It's interesting. We've heard from a lot of people who have come on and talked about healing through helping and supporting others.
It's true.
Yeah.
I don't know when people say, I'll wait until, I don't know how else to live, but that should be part of your living, is to serving humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I hear people say, when I get enough money, I'll do this and that. And I'm like, wow, I guess they've ever experienced any pain. I mean, there's some poem out there that says, when you're hungry, feed someone else. And it goes through each thing you're struggling with, which is each step is serving someone else, even though you're battling that.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could find it, but that's the only way I know to live, is to walk beside someone. And I've become strong. I can't believe, I was very shy as a little kid. I would hide behind walls
mm-hmm.
to talk to even my aunts and uncles. And to think that I go and speak on stage and share my feel. I mean, I can only give God the glory to, and the women and children, because they've taught me so much about authenticity and rawness, and to be real and to speak your truth. That's my community. That's, people say, who do you network with? I said, my networking is with women and children.
Yeah.
They've taught me you can't lie to a woman that's been through that much. She sees through that.
You've said something a couple of times of walking beside the people that you're helping. How important is it to have that attitude of, I'm not reaching down and helping this poor person up, I'm walking beside this person?
I think walking beside is knowing that we all have something we battle with.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel Enchanted Makeovers, I'll go back to the first time our donation we received, and it was a bag full of sheets with stains on them. And I remember I sat on my couch and I said, no, this is not gonna. I received a call that day, and a woman was talking about how much she first started about her pain. I noticed a lot of calls were coming in that I've never told my family that this is what I'm battling with. It was either domestic violence. And then I said to the woman, what is it you love to do? And she said, I love to quilt. Mm. And I said, why don't you serve from that place? Mm-hmm. So that's how that changed from a bag of sheets with stains to this has to be full circle. Mm-hmm. Because when we only take one side of this to the women and children, you don't give them a voice either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You were saying earlier that your niece read the book and she felt loved. And one of the things that you're hoping is that every kid who reads it feels that love. How, obviously, it's important for a kid in a shelter to receive a handmade doll and see themselves portrayed positively in the pages of your book. But what kind of conversations do you think a typical family that has a home and isn't struggling or seemingly isn't struggling with much of anything, what kind of conversations do you think that family can have while they're reading The Little Bear Who Loved Its Homemade Doll?
Well, the book doesn't represent homelessness, though.
Okay.
There's many people that live in mansions that don't feel loved. Mm-hmm. So that's just a start. That's just a starter for a conversation.
Okay.
For the parent and the child and the adult that's reading it.
Yeah, I have a feeling.
And when you get to the end, it's about taking action that, oh my gosh, this is a program for children. Mm-hmm. And if you craft, will you make a doll? But that right there, that interaction with the dolls and the bear, that's for anyone, no matter if you live, no matter what home represents to you. That's the message. It just so happens that it's attached to a charity, in a program.
Okay. What, obviously you were very busy running, your charity. Where did you get the inspiration and the time to then say, you know what? I'm going to write a book too.
I thought about this for years, of taking the programs and making them a children's book, but it just didn't feel right yet. I'm like, I didn't have it in me yet to do it. And then one day I just remember I was standing in my living room, and it was just that push again of, you're going to do this. And I just remember sitting down and I wrote the book. It was within hours it was done. Wow. It just poured out of me like, this is, and you don't know this, but a second book is already finished and it's already ready to go.
Super.
Yes. So, how do I say this? The 9-year-old wrote the book. Even though she said it's okay to move on, she said, okay, yes, I do have a voice. It was part of my healing too, is the book. But then you have to pass it on to others, that they can feel loved and start that healing process.
Yeah. I'm thinking that, my beautiful wife and I ran a ministry to a shelter, and we're really proud of it. It was a wonderful ministry in that, like your charity, all the things. It was a simple thing, Friday night desserts for the guests of the shelter. But the thing that made it so special was that all the desserts that we were serving were made homemade by the people, mostly in our parish, but from a lot of the greater community. And that way kids could get involved. This was a shelter. It was a shelter of last resort, so kids weren't allowed to go in and actually serve, but they could participate by cooking and putting the food together. And it was so well received. The guests of the shelter really, I think they really appreciated the fact that, somebody took the time to make this cookie, cake, whatever, for them. I think that's probably something that is real special with your charity too. You have people all over the world creating things for strangers in need.
Well, I'm going to go back to what you just shared. You do realize you created an experience for the residents. It was all about how you made them feel. That's all it's always about. You never forget that. I mean, yes, you're going to remember, oh, that was great, that dessert. But that feeling is the most powerful thing.
And that is something that we all experienced, was what made it the best interactions is when we locked eyes on one of the guests and said, hi, what can I get you tonight? What would you like? And I think the fact that we were seeing these people made a huge difference to them.
Don't we all want to be seen and heard?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's where it's the full circle. Women have taught me over the years is that we appreciate that there's food for us at the shelter and there's lighting, electricity, all that stuff, but no one ever wants to listen to us. So your stories do matter, no matter what four walls. And that's where it goes back to me saying full circle. is that the woman that's making that quilt, she also told me she was battling with domestic violence, but she's not in the shelter. So, that's the part. It's like kind of like a paradigm shift, a movement that I see other nonprofits, and I'm not trying to bash them, but I really believe that when we change the way we serve, it changes the way we see each other. And I think that's why our volunteers keep coming back, is because their love tanks are being filled.
Yeah.
Everyone's love tank. I mean, my mom has always believed, she always shares that we have love tanks. And some of them are kind of empty. Some of them are half full. And, you know, we need to work on that. So it's not really rocket science, even though people try to tend to make it that way. It's just how my mother took care of us. And it's just loving people, like I said, loving people back to life. And, you know, we've had, when we do like a shelter transformation, we always take a break in the middle of the day, and the women at the shelter, to the volunteers, they cook, they make their own favorite recipe. So we have all the ingredients donated. But what the piece is important is that everyone wears an apron. Who doesn't? To see a vintage or handmade apron, it's all that feeling. So I purposely set it up that way, is that I want people, their hearts to be ignited, and they feel that. So they're in the kitchen and women are cooking and baking together. There is no wall. It's just sharing. And then when we share the meal, it's no one dishing a plate to somebody. It's buffet, and we're all standing together and sharing a meal. But the one piece that we always include is everybody has a name tag. Because if you notice, you go volunteer, it's always one-sided, that only one person has a name. And I said, no, we all have to have a name tag. And that's just my experience as a child going to, it was this hall that my mother took us to say we're going to go get a Christmas gift. So we got all of our jackets on, our winter boots, and we walked up to, it was a couple of blocks away from our house. And I remember going in there. I still have the toy that I picked out, and I was 8 at the time. I'm grateful for the gift, but the experience, I felt ashamed and embarrassed. And I say that because of the line. So we had to stand in this perfect line, and the volunteers stood against the walls, and I felt embarrassed. It's like everyone's looking at me, and I knew that, okay, I'm the needy, poor child, which we don't use those words, but I'm being sarcastic right now. And he said, come here, girl, come on and pick out a toy. So one of our programs is the Patch Project, which is a 5x5 patch that's made with a heart in the middle, and the child gets to put their name on it, and it attaches to the Cakes for Kids.
Oh, neat.
Because every story begins with our name. So that's another way of, when we change the way we serve, it changes the way we see each other. So this is definitely, it's beyond, God never called me to decorate. If he did, I would have kept my business. It is truly a movement, a paradigm shift of just seeing each other and how we serve.
Well, I know people are going to want to know how they can get involved and how they can help beyond just buying the little bear who loved its handmade dolls. Is there a way for somebody in Switzerland or Boston or Florida can help you in your charity in Michigan?
Yes. Just reach out to us on our website. That's enchantedmakeovers.org, and share with us what you love to do. If you love to write, if you're in media, whatever that is, bring it to us, and let's see how we can work together.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, and I'm imagining that families can find the little bear who loved his handmade doll on the website as well.
Yes, it's on the homepage, and then it links right to Amazon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we can't wait for the second book to come out. Please be sure to come on back, and we'll celebrate that book as well.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I would love that.
Welcome. We've had a really eye-opening conversation with the author of The Little Bear Who Loved Its Handmade Dolls and the driving force behind Enchanted Makeovers. Our guest has been Terry Grahl. Terry, thank you not only for being on the show, but thank you so very much for all that you are doing.
Well, it takes all of us, and I want to thank you because now you've become a messenger for the mission.
My honor.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Hey, if you enjoyed this show, if you learned something from this show, if you are a fan of Tamron Hall and you know someone who's a fan of Tamron Hall, please share this episode with them. It's super easy to do, and it's a great way to recruit new people, new families to join us in our mission to help all families grow closer. And certainly, if you are inspired by Terry Grahl, please be sure to share the episode with everyone you think would like to get involved. I'm so excited. This has been such a wonderful episode of Reading with Your Kids. Thank you so very much for being here. And, of course, we'd love to connect with you on social media, so Facebook.com/Reading with Your Kids, at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on X. I want to thank the amazing women who helped us make this show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Tamron Hall. Please be sure to check out Harlem Honey, The Adventures of a Curious Kid. Also want to thank Terry Grahl. Thank her for sharing about the little bear who loved its handmade dolls. And also thank her for all the wonderful things she is doing for people all around our nation. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank the most incredible woman in my life, my beautiful wife. Thank you so much for all that you do to support me. I also want to thank you. You are amazing. You are a parent. You're going 18 million different directions every single day. You are there for your kids. You're advocating for your kids. You're cooking for them. You're reading with them. You're doing it all, and you're wonderful. And like Tamron said to me, I am so proud of you, and I'm so grateful that you're joining us, and I'm so thankful that you take the time to make the world a better place, and you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.